Okay, so the purpose of today's video is kind of a follow-up. We had purchased this Zline RA30 range from a Lowe's in December of 2019, and it is now April, the end of April of 2024. So we've had this range for a little over almost 4.5 years now, just shy of 4.5 years. And I had done a video on it when we initially got it. It was brand new. And then I had done a follow-up video 1 year later. And in that follow-up video, after a year of ownership, I had noted some things that we really like about it and a couple things that kind of bug us about it, you know, some minor little complaints. And so now I just want to do a follow-up to that because we have finally had an issue with it. In the 4.5 years that we've owned this, other than minor little things like this light, the lens popped off and broke. We had one of these handles that would come off, and I basically found a way to fix that. The rest of them are on nice and tight, but that one was loose. The fact that this porcelain top gets these spots on it, they're like hard water spots or whatever from spills and boil overs. We've tried everything in the world to clean that. We just can't quite get it clean again. But anyways, those are some of the things that bothered us. But you know, other than that, it's functioned just fine. We've not had any issues with it. But about a week ago, my wife was in here heating the oven up to, I think she was gonna bake just a frozen pizza or something, and she realized after about 5 minutes in that she opened the door to put the pizza in and the oven was ice cold. It was not getting hot. Now the gas stove top is still working just fine. Again, this is what they call a dual fuel, which means the top is gas and the oven portion is electric. And it just quit working. So, of course, I was not real happy with that and got online to see if anybody had posted similar videos of similar problems. And there are a bunch out there. So obviously this is a known issue or a problem that these Z-lines can develop. I'm assuming other stove brands also can do this, but on the Z-line, some of the connections that are in the back will actually just get burnt because the connections, the wires that go down and connect to the terminals, they're so close to the heat that they just cook and they bake and they just become brittle, and you know, that's basically what you end up with. So I had kind of made up in my mind that I was just going to replace this. So we were already shopping. We were trying to determine what stove we were going to replace it with because I was just, you know, not happy that 4.5 years into ownership and, you know, it wasn't working. But I did decide to go ahead and try to see if I could fix it, to see if I could find the problem. So we slid the thing out from the wall. I took the back off. It's pretty easy. It's just a number of screws, and looked at it, and you can see very clearly one of the wires at the bottom that connected to a terminal, one of the wires had just basically cooked, and the connector was barely touching. It was making a connection, but it was so loose it wasn't doing anything. So just to see if that was the issue, I went ahead and cut that connector off and stripped it. And this is basically all it was, is one of these little, I happen to have some in the basement, so I'll see if it'll focus on that. So I happened to have the right size, and I went down and got what I needed and crimped one of these on and put it on, and it fixed it. So the stove is working perfectly again. So we've decided we're going to keep it, obviously, because it's working. There's no reason to replace it. And since we're going to keep it, I decided to go ahead and fix it up a little bit, because after 4.5 years of fairly heavy use, there are a couple things that are kind of beat up, and I thought we'd go ahead and do a little bit of rehab. So the first thing I'm going to do is, again, this light is different on the newer models. I must have gotten one of the early ones, maybe like a first generation. The newer RA30s, they didn't change the model number on these, but the newer ones have a slightly different design. They use a different light here. Instead of an incandescent bulb with a lens cap, they use, I guess it's more of an LED. I'll show it to you here in a second. And for the switch, for the oven, which, you know, this switch here, on the newer ones, instead of this plastic rocker, it's more of a steel push button. So that's a slight difference that we saw. So, and the other thing I want to replace is, like most people, if you're right-handed, this front right-hand burner is the burner that you use probably 90% of the time, like we do. And because of constant use, this thing has literally eroded you can see that the, get this to focus right, you can see that the aluminum is literally just eroded away from the constant use and constant heat. So I want to replace this, and we've decided, because we absolutely cannot get this top clean, to go ahead and replace this black top. All these parts are available online from Zline, but you do have to be careful, and I want to give you one word of caution. If you go to order this piece, I think they call these flame spreaders or burner spreaders, because this piece is actually the burner. I think this is the spreader, and then these are the caps, these black things. When you go to buy these spreaders, you have to be very careful when you look at these online to make sure you're looking at the right one, because they don't really do a great job on their website of describing these things or telling you what position it's going to be in. And when you're just looking at a photograph, this one looks an awful lot like this one. And they are slightly different. You can see, I mean, I was literally counting these little knobs in between just to make sure I was ordering the right one. Because if I'm not mistaken, on the website, it literally says that replacement parts are non-returnable. So you want to make sure you order the right one. And so yeah, so I want to show you here, I went ahead and ordered, see if I can do this with one hand, but I'm going to be doing this here. I got the replacement light, which is right here. So I'll be installing that, which will go in here, and you can see that it's, instead of that white plastic, it's got more of a stainless, and I guess that's maybe an LED. I hope it's an LED that's in there. So that's one thing I'm replacing. And then I also got the replacement, you can see the difference here. I got the replacement spreader. But yeah, you can see the difference on the wear and the erosion on that thing. So I'll be putting that on. And then I also ordered the new top, a brand new shiny black top, which this was the most expensive piece. I think this was like $119. The rest of the stuff was pretty reasonable. I think the light was maybe 20 bucks and the spreader was, I think, 29. But anyway, so I'm gonna go ahead and put these pieces on, and I'll bring you back here as soon as I have that done. Okay, so I've gone ahead and taken the top off, which I thought I maybe had to take the back off to get the top off, but turns out you don't. You just undo the screws that are around the tops of the burners that hold the top in place, and then you basically need to push toward the back because there are a couple of tabs that go in the front, and then once you do that, you basically just lift up, and it's got a little bit of a seal to it, so it took a little force, but it popped free. But anyhow, now that I've got it up, I'm gonna replace this light before I put it back, and I'm wondering if this hole is going to be big enough, since it's a different generation on this light. It's a different type of light. I may have to drill this front stainless. I'll bring you back here in a minute and let you know if I had to do that or not. Okay, so I ran into a problem that I wasn't expecting. Because I have an older generation with a different style light, this light that I pulled out, as you can see, has the male connectors that go to the female connectors for the stove. The red and black, I gotta get it to focus, red and black, they're female. Well, the new lights, the new style, are a female connector. So I am going to have to replace one or the other. I either have to cut these off and replace them with male, or cut these off and replace them with female. So I have to decide which one of those I want to do, if I even have the right size. The other thing I have to do is this, which goes in the hole from the front, is larger diameter than the old one, which came out from the front. You have to push these two tabs in and pull the thing out the front of the stove. It was very hard to do, but it's a different size. So to even install this light, I have to drill this hole larger. I'm gonna have to go get a bit and see if I can figure out how to do that. So stand by. Okay, so what I decided to do was to go ahead and change the connectors on the new light, because it was a $20 part, and I figured if I'm gonna be cutting a piece off, of something and replacing it, I'd rather do it on the $20 part as opposed to the wiring harness that's on the stove. So I cut these off and I replaced them with male, crimped them on, and luckily I had the right size and they slide in and they work. I tried turning it on, it works just fine. So I'll come back in a minute and show you the rest. Okay, so that was a whole lot harder than it needed to be. They didn't mention on the parts website that that light had a different connector on it for the earlier versions of the stove. And they didn't mention that the hole would be a different size. So either I was looking at the wrong part, didn't see the light, replacement light for the generation that I have, or I don't know, but I was able to make it work. So what I had to do was I had to remove the old one. Like I said, you pinch down and it pulled out the front. It was kind of hard to do, but I got it out. Then I literally had to drill a new hole in the sheet metal in the front, and it's a 1/2-inch hole is what I had to drill. I took some painter's tape and covered this in case the drill bit would have slipped or walked on me. I didn't want to scratch the daylights out of the front. So I put some painter's tape on there and I used a 1/2-inch bit. And again, I had to change the connectors on the light. I changed those to a male connector so that they would match up with the female that are already on the stove's wiring harness, but it works. So that part is done. And the new top, nice and shiny, no water spots. The new top is installed, and the new burner spreader. I guess they call that the spreader. So spent roughly $200 on all these parts, but now it's pretty much like new again. And got everything. I didn't have to do anything inside there. But after that, after the repair that we did and putting these new parts on it, I mean, it's pretty much like having a brand new one again. We like it. We would continue to, obviously we're going to continue to use it now that it's working. My feelings on this, I don't know if I would recommend Zline after what we've run into, just because, in my opinion, 4.5 years is a little early for this thing to break and fail to the point that it wouldn't heat. Luckily, I was able to do it. I was able to do it for free because I had the part I needed in the, in my workshop. But somebody who's not comfortable working with these, may not have done that, and you would have had, at least probably a couple $100 repair bill to get a technician out here. So because of that, I don't know that I would recommend these. We still like it. It still works well. It still looks really nice. Again, we like the professional look to it. But these are the things that I've done. If you're dealing with Zline and you're getting these replacement parts, pay close attention to what you're getting. Read the descriptions. Because again, I believe it says on there that the replacement parts are non-returnable. So that's it. Thank you.